Just a heads up, this episode of No Filter touches on domestic violence. If you or someone you know needs help, please call 1-800-RESPECT now.
And we met. He goes, actually, really good looking for an Asian.
It's so comfy. I can't even speak about how comfy it is.
What did you say?
Thank you.
Were you offended?
It's very difficult to offend me. I was just laughing.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Freedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a weekly interview podcast with people who tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah, these things are actually shitting me a little bit.
What's it like living in a refugee camp?
You know, we all have a choice. We can be the victim or the beneficiary. And it served me very, very well to look back and say, I am the beneficiary of everything that has happened for me.
How does a polyamorous relationship actually work?
You know, there are times when he's like, she's cute at the bar, go have a chat. Or where have you been? And he's, just chatting to this really beautiful woman at the bar. And, okay, did you have a good time? It's that openness. It's an openness.
And how do you deal with intergenerational trauma that impacts your life to the point where you have to run away from home?
You know, when the key is turned in the door and he's home and that dread, he's home. Is he angry? Is he going to beat up on us again?
Today, I'm speaking to Pauline Nguyen, an award-winning author who describes herself as a spiritual entrepreneur. She's also the co-founder of Sydney's Red Lantern restaurant, which she runs with her brother Luke. And as you've heard already, Pauline has an incredibly interesting story. And because I don't want to spoil it, here's Pauline to tell you about her life, from polyamory through to parenting. My father didn't know where to put his trauma, and so he dumped it on us. Tell me about that.
He suffered terribly from PTSD. His father was abusive. His father's father was abusive. He witnessed a lot in the Vietnam War. He built a boat and smuggled us out to the South China Sea. We spent 9 days out at sea and ended up in a refugee camp in Thailand. We were only meant to spend there a few months, 3 months. We ended up staying there for a year.
How old were you and who was with you as part of your family?
I was 3. My brother Lewis was 2. There was mum and dad. My mother gave birth to my brother Luke in the refugee camp in a lean-to tent. And so you can imagine this man with status. You know, he'd fought in the war and he had status in the community, and then coming to the refugee camp in Thailand, being told that we will only be here for 3 months and being there for a year. And then in 1978, when Australia finally accepted us, then coming to a new country with nothing, right? My mother had tuberculosis, so he came to this new country with nothing. A very sick wife, 2 young children, a newborn baby. It's a lot of pressure, can you imagine? And so he's had intergenerational trauma.
And how did that play out on you and your siblings and your mum?
The violence on my mother began when my father also started working, and we witnessed him, beat her up, throw chairs across her face, all that stuff. And then he dumped that anger on to us kids as well, myself and my 3 brothers.
It's said that for children, watching violence against a loved one is the same, psychologically can be the same as having violence acts committed against them. Are they some of your earliest memories?
Yes, they are some of my earliest memories. My earliest memories. I have one memory which has been confirmed as I'm thinking, is it a flashback or is this a dream? I'm in Vietnam. My parents owned a market store, and I'm running through the crowd and I've got money in my hand and I'm chasing someone. And it's a boy. It's a grown boy. He's a teenager. And he tried to steal my ice money. I was given money to buy ice. Of course, my parents told me the full story later. And here I am, this little 2.5, 3-year-old, so angry, and I'm chasing this big boy through the markets. Give me back my money. I don't have enough for ice money. That's my earliest memory.
Do you remember being on the boat or in the refugee camp?
I remember being in the refugee camp. And again, it was flashbacks. I saw this colour, and it was it's like a denim blue and texture as well. And I asked my parents, what is this flashback of this colour that I keep seeing? And they told me that when my brother Luke was born in the refugee camp, my brother Lewis and myself would ask all the people in the refugee camp, because we all had uniform coloured towels, and they were this colour blue, and Lewis and I would go around asking people for the towels that they didn't want so that we could cut them up and make nappies for Luke, who was the newborn.
Were there certain things that triggered your father's temper?
Alcohol. I can only guess, hallucinate, that sense of uncertainty for the future. The violence inflicted upon us, I understand that that's the only way he knew how to ensure that we would grow up to be tough, disciplined, striving. And, well, we're all high achievers, but purely from extreme fear, growing up with fear. I know what fear smells like, living every day, when the key is turned in the door and he's home, and that dread, he's home. Is he angry? Is he going to beat up on us again? Understanding now we all have a choice. Looking back now, I see that as my training. We all have a choice. We can be the victim or the beneficiary. And it served me very, very well to look back and say, I am the beneficiary of everything that has happened for me.
Did you ever talk to your mum about the violence?
No, she was witness to it.
And you were witness to his violence against her?
Yeah. For my mother, growing up, she understood that was her lot. That's her karma. And she often hypnotized herself with the story that she must have been such a terrible person in a past life to deserve this life now. But that's very much the Vietnamese, and I'm sure many cultures, that's their story.
That's interesting you say that as if that was her way of making sense of it. What I see is she kind of heaped shame on top of a terrible situation where she actually was the victim. But do you mean that it actually helped her to think of that?
I can't speak for Mia. I can say that growing up, she had no choice. What other choice did she have?
It was the 70s. It's not like there was...
Yeah. What other choice did she have but to tell herself that story?
Yeah.
We have more choices now.
You started work at age 7. That seems awfully young.
That's why I look at my children now. Come on.
So true.
Come on.
How old are your kids now?
My daughter Mia is 15 and my son Jethro is 11. Very different personalities.
They should be on getting long service leave by now if they'd have started when you did. What did you do at 7?
Well, my father was quite the entrepreneur. That's where I caught the entrepreneurial bug. My father, when we first came to Australia, he worked on the production line in the Sunbeam factory in Campsie. He also had a cook's job at the hostel, the refugee hostel that we were at. And then when we left there, he started a driving school. That was the very first business that he had, was Lap Brothers Driving School. And he was quite infamous for being quite an angry instructor, right? But there's been stories written about him, right? But he got the results, right? Again,
so he'd shout at the students.
He'd shout at them. Wow. And I can imagine.
Turn left.
Indicate. Us growing up, we're like, please, Dad, we refuse to have you teach us. Well, we'll save up money just so we can have a proper driving instructor. We've already traumatized enough as it is, let alone be a danger on the road. And then when we moved to Bonnyrigg, he found a prime location in the heart of Cabramatta in the bustling commercial district. And the very first business he opened was a video library. He called it Lap Brothers Video Library. And it was during the time where, this is post-Vietnam War, the blockbuster releases were Full Metal Jacket, Born on the 4th of July, Platoon, Hamburger Hill, because, Asians love action movies,
all movies about Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam. Well, that was what started my love of movies. I did a communications degree at UTS, majoring in film and television, because of that experience.
Would that not be traumatizing to him to watch those movies?
I think there was a sense of pride. A huge sense of pride, because now they're on the other side. Now they're in a new country. So we worked in the video library, and then he moved the video library upstairs and then opened our very first restaurant. And so every morning I would go in and help with the mise en place, and my brothers would help. And then he got bright, shiny object syndrome, wanted to open an ice cream parlour. This is where my sense of mastery came in. It was always about mastering. And this ice cream was delicious, fresh fruit ice cream. And I have vivid memories of scooping out passion fruit and cutting pineapple and scraping coconut. It was that integral flavor. Everything was of integrity. And so we actually made ice cream. The kids made ice cream. We had proper pasteurizing machines and churning machines, and we had to get the recipe just right. Then he decided to make waffle cones, and so we had to get the batter just right, but that also involved a lot of sitting at the waffle machine and curling the cones.
And how old are you now?
7, 8, 9, 10,
Now it's like no child would be left near a hot object, even in their own home, let alone...
We were near stoves and...
Was it because he wanted you to be strong and resilient, or because he needed the labour, or both?
Both. We weren't short of workers. We always had workers as well, but we also worked full-time. And then he opened Cabramatta's first... we were Cabramatta's very first baristas, like frothing the cappuccino froth in the 80s where it's like 10 centimetres high.
What gave him that idea?
This is, I think, the typical entrepreneur problem. It's not an ideas problem, it's a focus problem.
I don't know anyone like that.
So, video library upstairs, restaurant downstairs. The menu was extensive. Ice cream parlour out the front.
With the waffle cones.
And the coffee machine. We were churning out so much coffee. And the driving school on the side.
So was he making a ton of money, or there were just every bit of money had to go back into all these businesses to fund them?
Yes. And putting us through school. For some reason, we raised attack dogs as well.
Sorry, what?
We raised attack dogs as well, and us kids raised attack dogs.
Breeding attack dogs?
Yeah, because that was another revenue stream.
What kind of dogs?
Rottweilers, pit bulls, Dobermans.
And they would be bred to, work with security guards, or just for people who liked having attack dogs?
Some he trained to then sell. Some he trained so that we could breed.
Wow. You mentioned school in there.
Yeah.
How did you find time to go to school?
Look, we weren't allowed a social life at all. Of course we went to school. We had to get good grades as well. Otherwise we were beaten.
Were you actually beaten?
Yes.
So amongst all of this, he would just beat you for what reason?
Not being good enough, coming home late from school, not getting good grades, whatever perception he had of what we were doing. But that was life. That was growing up. Growing up was shit.
Did you have friends that you would sort of compare notes with, or did you sort of grow up in a migrant community where everyone was living a similar kind of experience?
I don't know of anyone in our schools that had a similar experience. It wasn't that I was antisocial at school. I was the maverick. I'd go in, hang out with a few people. No, that doesn't suit me anymore. I think differently. And then I'll retreat, hang out with 1 or 2 people. But I was quite comfortable to be the chameleon and float around the groups as well. Everyone knew that I had a tough home life. Everyone knew, because becoming a young teenager, we weren't allowed to go to parties. We weren't allowed to go on most excursions. It was, no, I have to go home.
And go to one of my 17 jobs.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I talk to my kids, I'm always like, you've got it so easy in my day. But my day wasn't that bad, we didn't have the internet. There was no TikTok. But what do you tell your kids? And do they just roll their eyes at you like most kids do when parents try to say, back in my day it was so much tougher?
I caught myself saying that early on. It was like, you have no idea. And I would stop myself, Mia. Wait a minute, Pauline. You work your ass off so that they don't have that life. And how I grew up, it's very much, that was my training. That was also my anti-model. Yeah.
But does it irritate you intensely when they complain about things that you would have been so grateful to even have?
It's difficult to irritate me. There's not much that irritates me except laziness. I think it's important as parents that it's the privilege to watch them. My son is artistic, he's academic, he loves mastery. Currently he's mastering knitting. and crafts and what else can he make? My daughter has different intelligences. She's incredibly physical. She has physical intelligence, really good at sport. She has social intelligence. And so to understand where their genius is and to nurture that, whereas in my day it was, you're Asian, you got to be a lawyer, you got to be an accountant, otherwise there's shame on the family. It's a very different, I want you to be in your genius, but then you got to master your genius, you know. And so as parents, for myself and how I raise my kids, my number one role, my number one job is to make them as self-sufficient as possible.
To make yourself redundant, essentially, as a parent.
That is the wish, but also so that they have a sense of courage, of not very much fear, and to be internal referent. You know, I don't need validation from anyone because I know how to do it myself. I know how to hold my own. Hello everyone, it's my joy to be here. I am Pauline Nguyen, and today you are listening to No Filter.
You mentioned about being an Asian Australian and the expectation that you would be an accountant or a lawyer. What were some of the stereotypes when you were growing up about what you could and couldn't do?
Certainly muted.
What do you mean muted?
You can't speak. You're a female. Did I give you permission to speak?
Do you mean within your own culture at that time?
My own culture, in the presence of my father and his friends.
So it was deeply sexist?
Deeply sexist, and very much about filial duty. Have you greeted every single uncle in this room? Have you greeted everyone in this room? You know, going to school, it was, have you bid farewell to each and every person? It was all about how good they will look. You know, I can freely say this now on any platform because my parents are cool now. You know, we're friends, and I can tell these stories and my dad will have a laugh about how it used to be, which is why these days freedom of expression is important for me. Freedom to speak my truth.
How did you get to that point with your dad? Like, how would he feel hearing you talk about the way he used to beat you and beat your mother? How does she feel about that?
Well, in 2007, I released a book called Secrets of the Red Lantern, and it was a very cathartic experience. I didn't expect it to be so cathartic. Originally, it was a book that I wanted to write for my daughter so that she could have an heirloom, so that she could understand why I am the way I am. And it's sprinkled with beautiful recipes from Red Lantern.
Which is the restaurant that you co-founded with your husband and your brother, your partner and your brother,
yes,
I should say.
And it was very much about the prodigal daughter leaving home and the shame that I inflicted on my family for doing that.
When you say leaving home?
I ran away. I ran away when I was 17-ish.
Can't imagine why.
It was, Pauline, this can't be your life. If this is your life, I'll probably take my own life. You know, this can't be it. And so with the help of my brothers and with the help of a friend, I ran away. And they were left behind to pick up all the pieces. That's very much what the book was about. There's 10 chapters in Secrets of the Red Lantern. I'd finished the 7th chapter, and my father kind of knew that I was writing this book. And I remember so vividly, I was sitting at Red Lantern, we were in Crown Street, and strewn across the table are manuscripts, his photos from Vietnam, the head publishers sitting across from me, the designers sitting to my right, I'm in the middle, you know, Mark and Luke are in and out, and in comes my dad. He paid us a random visit, and he's in the middle of the restaurant. Here I am with photos of him as well as the family photos and these strangers sitting around. And it dawned on him, holy shit, this story that she's writing about the family is actually a reality. And he very quietly went out the back and sat there introspectively, and he said, I want to read the book. The whole point of the book was to complete it and then give it to him so that he could see the full arc of the story, so that he could see what a beautiful story it really is, right? It's about personal freedom and family and hope. But the 7th chapter is actually the worst chapter about him. It's the most scathing account about him. And when he asked for it, I said, Luke, what should I do? And then Luke's like, no, just make up something. I said, you know what? It is what it is. So I gave him the manuscript, which ended on chapter 7, the worst chapter about him, and I didn't hear from him for about 3 months.
Oh.
I needed to hear from him so that I could finish the book. And I remember Father's Day came and I went home to face the music. They cooked a feast for us, and I brought him a case of his favourite red wines as a peace offering. I had my brand new baby daughter, Mia, with me at the same time. We sat down and I said to him, Dad, what do you think about my book? And he said, it's good. There's just one thing wrong. I said, okay, Dad, what's that one thing? The fish sauce recipe is wrong, right? Okay. It's pretending again. We're pretending again, you know. I'm hoping to confront him so that we can make things better than before. And he's sitting there pretending. So we sit and we pretend some more, and I ask him one more time, Dad, come on, what do you think about the book? And he gives me the same response about the fish sauce recipe. And now, like, there's no hope. We're just going to pretend for the rest of our life. There's going to be no resolution. I start packing my things. I start grabbing my baby, grabbing my things, and I said, I'm going to ask him one last time because clearly he's seeing that I'm leaving. I said, Dad, what do you think about my book? Come on. In a voice very, very serious, he said, do you know why Buddha sits on a lotus flower? What does Buddha sit on a lotus flower? And he said, there's nothing as beautiful as a lotus flower. He says, out of watery chaos it grows, emerging from the depths of a muddy swamp, and yet remains so pure and unpolluted by it, so pure that you can eat it, all of it. The roots, the seeds, the stems, the petals, the leaves. And then he says, but there's one other quality of a lotus flower. Its stem you can very easily bend, but you cannot easily break. It has tenacious fibers that hold the plant together. And then in a voice very serious, he says, my children are lotus flowers. You have grown out of the aftermath of war. You have grown up in Cabramatta during its murkiest time. And most of all, you've grown out of me. I am mud. Ooh. I am dirt. I am shit. I am very lucky to have you all. It was so beautiful. He never gave me an apology. Vietnamese parents don't apologize. They send cut fruit. But he gave me acknowledgement.
And they tell beautiful stories and allegories. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. And he'd given me everything that I'd been waiting over 20 years for. He gave me acknowledgement. And he said, had I read this book 10 years ago, I would have exploded. And I would have probably beaten the crap out of your mum and beaten the crap out of you. And there's a right time and a right place for everything. And so I had content, I had real life story, I had real evolution to complete my book.
Tell me about meeting Mark.
Mark, I had spent 5 or 6 years in Europe after graduating from university. And you could ask me how many countries I visited, I could tell you, but it doesn't mean anything because I wasn't present. I travelled extensively, but it was party days. Lots of party days. I got it out of my system fast. And I graduated in BA Com, and then I went over to London and worked in post-production in Soho. I worked for a company called VTR, which was the 3rd largest post-production company in Europe at the time, and partied and played and came back in 2000. And I worked for a company called Watch Out Productions, which is now Z Space. And I decided to go freelance. I didn't do very well. I wasn't very good at taking orders from other people. And I understand that it's not in my human design to have a boss. I have collaborators telling me what to do, but I can't have a boss. So I decided to go on my own, and I didn't do very well. It was during the Olympics. And my girlfriend at the time said, I know you've just come back to Australia. You're probably needing some extra cash. We need waiters. We're really, really busy. It was a restaurant called the Olympic Hotel on Moore Park Road, just opposite the stadium. And I said, okay, what kind of cuisine is it? I need to be around quality food because throughout university, I worked under the tutelage of some amazing chefs and sommeliers. I need to have that high bar. And, well, it's a chef called Mark Jensen. He's a very up-and-coming apprentice chef. He's now got his own business. We just need help. And so Luke and I worked casual shifts at the Olympic Hotel.
Your brother was he a chef by then, or he was a waiter?
He had this dream that he was going to open.
Restaurant.
Yeah, he hadn't opened it yet. We were still mucking around a lot in those days. And I met Mark, and Mark was married at the time. And I was in and out, still partying days. I was working casually at the Olympic Hotel, went overseas, mucked around a little bit more, came back and asked all the chefs, hey, how's your girlfriend going? How's this going? Catching up. And they were nudging me. They go, ask Chef how he's going. Ask Chef how he's going. I go, well, why would I ask Chef how he's going? He's married. How often do you say, so how's your marriage going? Right? You don't, right?
Not bad this week.
And I said, okay. How is your marriage going, Chef? And said, oh, she left me for another man. And immediately I said, oh, does that mean you're available? He goes, yes, I'm on the market. I said, okay, great. And left it. About a month later, he asked me out. We've been together 20 years.
And was it like hot and heavy from the outset? Did you know it was pretty serious?
I only do hot and heavy.
You only do hot and heavy. So
this is no filter, right?
Of course. So you mean you don't do sort of casual, non-committal, who cares, whatever?
No.
It's like it's on or it's off.
Correct.
Right. You didn't get married.
No.
And you're not exclusive.
No.
Speak to me about polyamory.
Polyamory is the ability to love more than one. It's not sleeping around. It's not mucking around. It's the ability to love more than one.
In a romantic and sexual way.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes.
How does it work?
When there's truth, when there's respect, when there's boundaries. It works when it isn't gratuitous.
What would gratuitous look like?
Gratuitous is if it's all over the place for everyone to see. It's done with class. It's done with respect for all parties. And it doesn't get, sometimes I get asked, what about jealousy? Well, what is jealousy when all parties are aware and all parties are respectful?
Did you always know that you wanted to live a polyamorous life?
Yes. I've known that I'm a mystic. I've known that I'm polyamorous from a very early age.
So how did you bring that up with Mark, or how did it come up?
Before we started dating.
That's good to get it out on the table. What did you say?
Hey, I like men and women, and I have the ability to love more than one.
And what did he say?
Okay.
And then what happened?
What do you mean, what happened?
Pauline, I've got so many questions. So by all means, tell me if they're too much. But tell me about the rules and the boundaries, and give me an example of the first time that you had to navigate this within your relationship with Mark.
When we both understand that we have permission to play. You know, there are times when he's like, she's cute at the bar, go have a chat. Or where have you been? And he's, just chatting to this really beautiful woman at the bar. And, okay, did you have a good time? It's that openness. It's an openness. But we are intelligent enough to not say, tell me all the details.
How do you stop falling in love with someone that you're having a relationship with? Do you call it a relationship?
Yes, but it's the ability to love. It's not that you deny falling in love.
Right. So you fall in love, but then what if they want you to stay over? What if they want to live with you? What if they want to go on holidays with you?
It depends what relationship you have, but if there's honesty with all parties, then it doesn't even go there.
So you, before you embark on another relationship, they know what your boundaries are.
Absolutely.
And what are your boundaries?
That I am committed to Mark and that I am committed to my children.
Which means you would not end that relationship with him, or that you would not be exclusive with someone else.
Yeah, but nothing is permanent in this world. The paradigms that don't sit well with me, what I mean by don't sit well is they just don't make sense to me. When we are married or have one partner, and I've experienced so many relationships or couples that are miserable, but because they're married, they stay in that relationship. Or they say, you are my best friend, you are my soulmate, you are my everything. That's a lot of pressure for one person.
It's a lot of pressure.
Why don't your best friends be your best friends? Why don't you be your own person? Why should that person complete you or be a mini you or be a mini me? You know, stay sovereign. And so it's that understanding also that should it end and you've been together 10 years, 20 years, that's not a failure. That's a bloody good innings. And be okay with things not being permanent. I don't live with the paradigm that this is permanent. And so should Mark and I not be together, the commitment is still there. The commitment to our children, the commitment to our commitments.
I feel very old-fashioned asking you these questions all of a sudden, but I'm trying to get my head around, have you had a series of other relationships, or is it more fluid, or is it like a one-night thing? Is it just about sex? Like, I'm just trying to understand, for so many people, the idea of fidelity is so black and white. And I suppose when there's no rules, how do you navigate it?
But there are rules.
Okay, what are the rules?
Well, with our life, it's not a one-night stand. One-night stands don't mean anything. So if a partner doesn't fulfill you spiritually, and you can have a relationship with someone who does. If you like dancing and they don't, one person doesn't need to be your everything, you know. And so, again, it's the ability to love more than one. And a lot of people think polyamory means sleeping around. It doesn't. It can do. I have a friend who lives in a house with 5 others and they all have a relationship together. That's not what we do, but they are committed to those people. So many definitions, so many different rules.
Do you meet some of the people that Mark might be involved with and vice versa?
No.
So it's that sense that intimacy is infinite, so that you being intimate, and I don't just mean physically intimate, but emotionally intimate with someone else in a romantic way does not in any way diminish how much intimacy you can give to your primary relationship. Would you call it your primary relationship with Mark?
Yes.
Yeah.
In many ways, it enhances it because we are fulfilled, because we are in spirit, because we are inspired. We don't live in lack, we live in abundance.
Oh, so it's not like, why aren't you giving me what I need? It's like, I'll make sure I'm getting what I need so that the fluctuations, because every long-term relationship goes through that, right? Where sometimes someone's tank is full and they can give a lot to the other person and sometimes it's not. And so you're saying that it actually helps even things out more.
Oh, I understand what you're saying now. You're coming from, we go here because this is suffering. No, we go here because we want to feel alive. You know, there's so many things that...
See, I told you I was old-fashioned the way I was thinking about it. I feel like I'm on a completely different plane where I'm being very simplistic.
So Mark likes to cycle. I don't. Mark likes a whole lot of things. And for us, it's okay for him to have his friends. It's okay for me to have my friends. It's okay for him to travel with his mates. It's okay for me to travel with our mates. We don't feel that we need to blend. Most relationships is like, why aren't you friends with my friends? You know, it's like, because I kind of don't want to. I've got my own friends and we have more fun, you know, and he's the same. So we don't live by that paradigm of you need to live in my pocket, I need to live in your pocket, and we're very happy. So it's not you complete me, you are my happiness. No. I am my happiness, you are your happiness. Let's be happy together on our own separate paths, running in our own lanes.
What do people misunderstand about people who are same-sex attracted and opposite-sex attracted?
I don't know. I can't answer that question because I can't read their mind.
What are some of the prejudices, I suppose, or the myths that you've perhaps encountered?
That anything that is not the typical husband-wife monogamy relationship means that you're a slut or means that you sleep around or means that you're this, because people are always afraid of what they don't understand.
And are they a bit jealous maybe as well?
Possibly.
Like
I don't know.
a bit envious of your lifestyle.
I don't know. You know, I'm very loath to read other people's minds and guess what they think because God knows what they think. And it's interesting because when people start talking to me about, you know, integrity and honor, it's like...
Well, as if you don't have it.
Well, because their sense of integrity is this paradigm. It's like, well, there's a lot of things that I do that is bloody integral. But according to my integrity is very different to your integrity, you know. But if your integrity is based on one man, one woman, till death do you part, no, I'm not going to wait until I die. My hallucination is that they misunderstand it by thinking that it is about sleeping around.
When you say my hallucination, what do you mean by hallucination?
Well, you're asking me, what do you think people think? I'm very loath to say this is what I think they think because how do I know? How do I know that for sure?
Well, I guess because people have told you what they think.
In a roundabout way, or they've told other people, but it's society. That is what the majority of people think, right? That it is impossible to love more than one. But I'm sure many listeners will go, yeah, it is possible. We just keep it a secret.
And also, I mean, I know it's different, but we love more than one child, don't we? So it's not like we have a finite capacity for love.
Yeah, it's just the rules of marriage.
Yeah,
that says that. But in many cultures, it's more than one. But that doesn't mean, in my world, one night stands all over the place.
Or swinging or
it doesn't work
orgies
that way.
or... Yeah, I imagine that people get quite caught up with the sex side of it rather than the emotional intimacy side of it.
Yeah, and the friendship.
Pauline has written a book. It's called The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur, The 7 Secrets to Becoming Fearless, Stress-Free and Unshakable in Business and in Life. That sounds like a pretty big promise. It won the Business Book Award in 2019. And I have to say, she's got an amazing sort of ethereal, calm energy about her. She's very, she's like this combo of driven, you could probably hear it in the interview, really driven and clearly very ambitious and super smart, and also quite ethereal and quite spiritual, I guess. I highly recommend learning more about Pauline in whatever way you can. Thank you for listening to this episode of No Filter. I want to hear from you about what your favourite No Filter episode has been. So call the pod phone on 02 8999 9386 and tell me. Or you can send me a voice memo to podcast@mamamia.com.au. This episode was produced by Leah Porges with assistant production from Melanie Tait. The executive producer of No Filter is Eliza Ratliff, and I'm Mia Freedman. I will see you on mamamia.com.au. Lots of love.